At this time, I would invite, we're going to have a panel of folks that want to talk about this issue that are very well versed from different business perspective, faith-based perspective, whatever perspective they have. And I'm going to ask them to come forward. We're going to have a short panel discussion. I will give you as audience members an opportunity to ask them questions. Certainly, this forum this afternoon is not Farm Bureau's forum. We are proud to host it here and make our facilities available. We're certainly glad to work in partnership with many groups. As you saw, the Secretary's bipartisan policy organization dealing with this issue, and certainly a group that we've worked very closely with on this issue dealing with immigration reform, and that's with the Bibles, Badges, and Business Group. And Ali Noriana is here from that group. And Ali, thank you for being here. We value the relationship that we have, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Well, we'll continue this discussion. We won't be here too much longer, but certainly we've got some folks here that I've worked with on several panels and that bring a perspective on this issue. And I'd ask, start right here with Bert Lemkes. And Bert, if you'll introduce yourself and tell who you are and what you do, and then we'll just go down the line. And then I've got a few questions I'm going to ask each one of them to let them talk about from their perspective, and then we'll open the floor for a few minutes for some questions from you to these people in business about this issue. So, Bert.
Thank you. My name's Bert Lemkes. I'm part of Hemmingen International, a greenhouse company, part of the green industry, part of agriculture in North Carolina, also an immigrant, first generation, and that really sums up my interest quickly in immigration reform.
Bert, what country did you immigrate from?
Netherlands.
From the Netherlands.
Fleeing the oppressive environment of the Netherlands, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Rainy environment.
My name's Charles Cook. I am an immigration lawyer in Atlanta. I'm the former national president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. I'm also an adjunct professor of law at the University of Georgia. So I'm actually on the people side and the business side of immigration.
And Charles and I have served on a panel together down in Atlanta several months ago dealing with this same issue with Ali and his group. Thank you for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
All right, my name is Whitney Christensen. I'm a lobbyist and staff attorney at the North Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association. We are the official advocacy voice for 17,000 restaurants in the state and 1,700 lodging properties. So I lobby for the association at the North Carolina General Assembly, not in Washington. And I also help North Carolina restaurants and hotels with their legal issues, particularly our members at the association. And just really honored to be here today and humbled to be a part of this important conversation.
Whitney, thank you, and for the contribution that your folks make to the economy of our state and nation. Yes.
My name is Rodel Hernandez. I'm one of the pastors at the Summit Church. I'm also one of the directional elders at the Summit Church. And I particularly pastor and serve as the pastor for the Spanish-speaking community at the Summit Church as well, and I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank all of you for being here. I think you can tell that they're very well qualified and have a diverse areas of interest in this issue. I guess my first question would be, and Bert, I'll start with you. Why is this issue of immigration, you've been working on it a long time, why is it such an important issue in your area of expertise, in your business? Why is it such an important area of interest for you?
Well, I'll answer the question twofold. First, 70% of labor force in agriculture is, as per the government, undocumented. So obviously something has to be done because the other 30% will lose their job if the 70% doesn't show up anymore. The second part is we, as a company, now it's the law in North Carolina, but we started using E-Verify. And when people ask me, how does E-Verify work for you? I often tell them, those that pass E-Verify fail to do the work. Those that fail to pass E-Verify can do the job very well.
And I've heard Bert say that many times. Just to add to what, before I get to Chuck, I was in the mountains of North Carolina yesterday. The Commissioner of Agriculture has all of the commissioners of agriculture from across the country there. And the apple growers, I was with several apple growers yesterday, and they're saying right now they're 40% short on labor to pick apples in western North Carolina. Apples will drop on the ground this year. Charles, why is this area important to you and what you do in the area of immigration law? What's the big issues facing it?
You know, the big issue for me, this is an economic issue, which is obviously for us from the farm perspective, from the restaurant association, from generally from society. It's a societal issue too. You know, we've spent a lot of time over the last 20 years talking about immigration reform. Back in 1996, Congress passed a law that actually causes a lot of the problems we have today. And the reason it does that is because Congress thought they were doing a good thing by saying, if you come into the country illegally, you can't ever get legal here. You have to go home. Now, most folks would say, okay, you broke the law coming in, you should go home and fix it. But then Congress also said, oh, by the way, if you were here illegally and you go home, you can't come back for 10 years. So if you come here to get a job and you have an employer that wants to say, I want to sponsor you to get a green card, and you said, great, I'll do that, I'll go home and wait 10 years to come back. Would you go home and wait 10 years? No, and you can actually trace the massive increase in undocumented immigration from 1996 to 2007 directly to that law. You know, so what I spend a lot of time dealing with every single day are people who are the victims of that law and their employers, as well as those employers who hire the best and the brightest out of our universities and colleges who want to make them legal and are told, for example, oh, that kid that you want to hire from India with the master's degree in technology, it's going to take you 9 years to get him a green card. I mean, this is a stupid way to run a country. You know, Secretary Chertoff made a really good point. Nobody's banging the door to get into Russia. One guy is, but nobody else is banging the door to get into Russia or North Korea. People come to America because we're the greatest country in the world. And that's in spite of our immigration laws. So the reason I advocate on this and talk about this frequently is because I know that America as a nation of immigrant is way better than America as not a nation of immigrants. We're all the result of either ourselves or our parents or our grandparents or our great-grandparents who made the effort and believed they could have a better life here. That dream is no different in 2013 than it was in 1928 when my grandparents came. It is the same dream today, and I want to be part of that dream.
Thank you. Whitney, why is this issue so important to you and the Restaurant Association and the folks that you represent?
I think the hospitality industry has an especially large stake in the immigration reform debate. More than anything from a labor perspective, our industry faces large and mounting labor shortages both in North Carolina and nationwide. Between 2013 and 2023, the National Restaurant Association, our affiliate in Washington, projects a 9.8% increase in restaurant industry jobs in the United States. Their projections for North Carolina between that same time frame are even higher at 13%. So, I mean, our field is growing, and we're already understaffed. So it's really a labor issue for us in a large way, but also a patronage issue. The immigrants who are here in the United States now and the foreign-born people who live in this country are great patrons of restaurants and hotels. They're eating in our dining establishments. They're putting heads in hotel beds. And in our industry, a lot of our businesses, probably the majority of our businesses, operate on very thin profit margins. And to lose, any portion of that would just be a big loss and make viability of many hospitality businesses that we all enjoy really become threatened, I would say.
Thank you. The Summit Church has a very large presence here in the Triangle area. It's a very large church with a large following. Pastor, why is this issue so important to you and your church and the faith-based community in this state?
It's vital to us because it breaks our hearts that usually when people come to a faith-based community, there's usually a prognosis, something you can prescribe to elder illness, spiritually, physically. But it's very frustrating as a pastor when I have a congregation member that says, I want to get this fixed. I want to do the right thing. And there is no process. There is no way to really recommend for them to amend what they need to amend. And that's why it's frustrating. It's a lack of process. And that's why we're advocating for it as well.
What do you see, Pastor, and we'll come back this way, what do you see as some of the major challenges from your perspective that we must overcome as a state, as a nation, in making this issue better and correcting the issue?
I think Sir Secretary Chertoff mentioned something very important. I face this personally a lot, and it's the amnesty issue. People think, at least in my experience in the faith-based community, that's been the pushback. But it's important to understand, and so I think education is important to understand that this is not amnesty, that these folks would definitely be paying their dues for becoming residents here. And so I think that's the greatest pushback that I get. So I think forums like this to educate our faith-based community are huge, and just to educate everyone in the United States that this is not amnesty. This is really a pathway that doesn't exist, that needs to exist.
Charles, what do you think are some of the greatest challenges we have to getting this issue corrected from where you sit?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I want to make a point though. When did it become bad to forgive people?
Right.
I mean, when did amnesty become a dirty word? And I hear this, I speak at a lot of churches, and I hear these from Christians a lot. I think, well, I think you better be hoping there's amnesty somewhere down the road. The challenges that we face are not insurmountable. A lot of it has to do with a certain level of xenophobia. America is a country, we love immigrants from the past. Immigrants from today, we've never liked very much. And you can go back to Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was terrified, that so much so that he wanted to make English an official language in the Constitution because he was convinced we would all be speaking German if we didn't do that. He was terrified of the German immigrants coming into Pennsylvania. We've always had that fear. As America, we need to overcome that in the age we live in, and we can do that easily. These changes being proposed in Congress, and particularly in the Senate bill, this is not rocket science. This is actually pretty easy stuff to get over with. It's easy to do a background check. It makes you more secure. It creates jobs. It makes a better society for us moving forward. These shouldn't be hard things for Congress. What we have to do as a community, as believers in this issue, and immigration as a power and a force to move us forward, both as a state and as a Southeast United States in the United States, is we have to tell the people who shout down those who believe in immigration as a power for good that we are stronger than they are. I mean, today there's a lot of polls going around that say that 60% of Americans don't want to get involved in Syria. So congressmen are screaming like chicken with their heads cut off, oh, we can't go to Syria, we can't go to Syria. Almost 70% of Americans favor immigration in the form it's in the Senate bill, and we hear nothing because we're not vocal enough. And that's what I'd like to see change. Those who believe in reform, who believe that our system must work for us instead of against us, are louder than those who oppose us.
Bert, what do you see as challenges to this, getting this done?
I think we need a immigration reform like it's been portrayed this afternoon that takes away the fear. Right now, it is quite an upheaval when we get visit from a congressman in our business. We employ between 250 and 350 people. This past spring, we had our congressman walk through the greenhouse, and obviously he had people following him. Whoa. People are scared of any official visit to an agriculture business, a farming business. We got to take the fear away, and the only way we can do that is with having a sensible agriculture visa program, immigration reform, so that those that are here can drop that fear. And for the future, we can be assured that we have a labor force. The demographics in the United States have changed. Our kids have a good education. If any way possible they go to college, they're not going to pick tomatoes. They're not going to pick apples. They're not going to dig up trees. That means we need that labor force. Now the challenge is, and there was a remark made already, the next generation of immigrants that come in are going to be different. If I talk to some of the kids of the people that work in our business, I'm always floored. They have a lot less accent than I do.
You have an
Would you agree with that, Whitney? What are the challenges you see from the hospitality industry that to making this better?
I agree with all of the panelists. I think there's a lot of misinformation, fear, stereotypes that all three together hinder comprehensive immigration reform and progress on the issue. I think one of the other obstacles to this has been a patchwork of state legislation that creates problems for restaurants and hotels and all businesses really that operate in a variety of states. You can imagine Golden Corral, which is headquartered just up the road, how difficult it must be for them to gain a thorough understanding of the immigration laws in every different state they operate if all of those laws are to be different. But really the state legislators haven't had a choice because there hasn't been action on the federal level, and they're doing their best to push the issue forward here. So I think that's another obstacle we face.
Certainly, I couldn't agree with you more. All of us that work here in the state with the members of our General Assembly agree with you. It is a federal issue, but the inaction by Congress is putting tremendous pressure on the members of the North Carolina legislature, and not only our legislature, but other legislatures all across the country. And certainly Georgia is very familiar with that issue down there. You want to comment on it quickly?
It's really interesting. One thing I hear all the time from folks is, well, if they would just enforce the law, if Obama would just enforce the law. Well, I have to tell you, I have stood beside thousands of people in immigration court in the last 20 years watching the law be enforced. Do you know what most of the Latino community in Georgia call President Obama? He is the deportation president. Obama his administration has deported more people in almost 5 years than were deported in the previous 20 years combined. There is massive amounts of enforcement. On the border, we now spend 8 times more money on the border and have 8 times many Border Patrol agents as when Bill Clinton was president. We have almost 20,000 Border Patrol agents. They could literally almost join hands and sing Kumbaya if we wanted them to on the border. And what we have as a result is we have fewer people coming into America today illegally than Richard Nixon was president. In more than 40 years, we have a net outflow of Mexican immigration as a result of various factors, including both our economy, which has not been great, and the Mexican economy, which has been far better, as well as border enforcement. So the idea that there's still massive floods of people coming across the border is simply not true. And people live in this idea that it's still 2003 and 2004, and it's not. Things have changed, and enforcement is occurring every single day.
Bert, do you feel positive? Do you think we're making progress on this issue from say 2007 when we all got our nose kind of twisted up and bloodied on this issue?
I think we're making progress, but I think it is at the same time very important to keep talking about this and explaining. The extreme anti-immigrant groups we're not going to convince, but there is a large group in the population that does not understand that those undocumented people working here don't create problems, pay taxes, pay Social Security for somebody else. They don't know. And a solution, border security is brought up every time. Border security, the best border security is a good immigration system. Amen. And Secretary Sherkoff said that.
Yes.
One thing I want to jump back onto, I mentioned fear. And I know we had a proposal in North Carolina legislature to get a driver's permit. And that went sort of on a sidetrack. I really hope and pray that as we're waiting for the federal government to do something, that at least we can clean that mess up in North Carolina.
Representative Warren's out there somewhere, and he certainly hears that. And to his credit, it was an issue that he worked feverishly on. And I can tell you, listening to him since then, I'm not going to speak for him, but he hadn't let that issue drop. So, the last question before we have a chance to really talk some more with it, get some of you to ask questions of our panelists here. What do you think, and what are you currently doing? What do you think we ought to do more? I mean, we're having forums like this. We're meeting with groups. We're traveling. What do you think, Whitney, that we ought to be doing to help move this issue on down the field and hopefully get it across the goal line?
Last week I attended a meeting with United States Congresswoman Renee Elmers and Carrie, and Linda Andrews from the Farm Bureau was there, and I think she made an excellent point. She said it's great to share these stories of the impact that our immigrant laborers, our neighbors, our friends, our fellow congregation members have made in our lives and in our local economy as well as our national economy. It's great to share those stories with each other, but it's even better to share those stories with the media and with your elected officials. And I think at NCRLA, I can commend our CEO, Lynn Minges, for doing an amazing job of that over the past few months. She's written countless op-eds to both national and local electronic and print media outlets. Many of them have been published. She scheduled town hall meetings with 4 or 5 different congressmen and women during the August recess when they were all back in their districts, stressing this point every time and stressing how important this issue is to our industry. And she and I also went to Washington earlier this year and had conversations with 11 of the congressmen and women and senators that represent North Carolina and told them how important it is to us. And I think that's really the best thing we all can do is continue to be vocal about how important it is, not only to your elected officials, but also to the media. Because if there's one thing I've learned in the last year, it's the power of the media to shape policy. So engage your local media, national media, and definitely your elected officials, and just keep the attention on this issue, especially now that they're back in Washington.
And certainly, I couldn't agree with you more, and certainly having forums like this, but certainly not being afraid to engage people that may have a different point. As the secretary said, I look at this thing as a 3-legged stool. You can talk about border enforcement, guest worker programs, or what do you do with the undocumented? I mean, those are the 3 issues, and we're not going to all get what we want on any of those issues, but certainly not being afraid to engage in dialogue with certainly the Latino community on this issue to get different perspectives on it. Pastor, what do you?
Absolutely. A voice, education, and just like Sir Charles was saying, there's nothing wrong with amnesty. I also want to say there's nothing wrong with picking tomatoes. It is a noble job, and part of what we do as a church, as we minister and serve the migrant community, we have several of our small groups that go and minister to the migrant community. It's just to highlight the fact that my father was in agriculture for a long time, and it's a noble job, it's a decent way of living, and we need those jobs, we need that labor. So absolutely, a voice in education and encouraging the Latino community as well.
Trust me, if it wasn't noble to crop tobacco, I sure did a lot of unnoble work, I can tell you. Picking tomatoes and blueberries and cucumbers, but those are honorable jobs too. We just they really are, whether you're potting flowers or whatever. Bert, what do you think we ought to do to continue to move this issue forward?
Well, I think it's reaching out, keep it in the forefront. Don't let somebody else do it for you. You got to speak up yourself, everybody, because yes, the press and the op-ed letters, and that's true. But reach out in your church. If you're not in agriculture, reach out to other businesses. People have to understand the economic impact, and there's only one way. You and I talk.
Charles, finally, to close up the formal portion of this panel, we're going to take some questions for you. What do you think we ought to be doing that we're not doing that would elevate this issue or help move it across the goal line to get us in the Congress moving?
I think it was really interesting. Go back to 2007, the last time we had this debate. Why didn't it pass then? And I was very actively involved. I was leading this organization of lawyers at the time, and what struck me at the time is why we didn't get it over the goal line at that point. It was business wasn't there. You had advocacy groups there. Some people would call them liberal advocacy groups that were there. You had some of the self-interested groups there, but you didn't have business. And that's what's different this time. Business is there. Ag was there before, restaurants were there before, but we were alone. Who wasn't there was the chambers of commerce weren't there. Individual business owners were afraid. They were almost kowtowed into not speaking out on this. But now we have to take that next step. Facebook has founded a group called Forward, FWD.us. I'd encourage you to join that group online. I'd encourage you to get involved on your Facebook pages. If you tweet from your tractor, please do that. Hey, I'm plowing the crops in today. Vote for immigration reform. Things that you can do on your social media in your church. We simply, as a normal people, support immigration. I'm a normal person. I support immigration. I don't have any monumental self-interest in this. I just think this is good for our country and good for America. That's what we need to happen now. Business and us as people need to get involved and be active and be vocal.
Thank you. Let's thank our panelists. I think they've done a great job. Now, do you have, any of you have, in the few minutes we have left, do you have a question for one of the panelists? Yes, sir, I recognize you right here. Let me get the mic so everybody can hear the question, and then we'll.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I think everything that's been expressed is excellent. Is marvelous that we can get together and talk about these issues that affect our nation, and we need to really take the bull by the horn on these things, on these issues. And my question to Charles, right? Charles, is we from the faith community, we deal a lot with the broken homes when the family structure has been broken or separated, when the father, the mother, or even some sibling is being deported. And also the economic aspect that has in our community, because now the breadwinner is gone, or the father, the mother that created that the microcosm of this family is gone. Now we are looking at what factor does the spiritual, moral, and social factors play in this immigration reform? I think we have reached the climax where immigration reform is it's no longer an issue. It's a necessity. It's a must, and it has to happen. So, what are, in considering these factors, what is your position for the immigration reform, and what role will these issues play in the immigration reform?
It's a great question. Most people don't realize of the 11. We use the term 11 million as if we actually knew how many people were here, but the 11 million or so of that number, about 40%, over 3.5 million. Are people who live in what we call mixed citizenship households. That is, somebody that's in that household is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. And you heard about the line all the time. People are waiting in the line. Oh, Bobby is waiting in the line to come. What you don't realize is most people that are waiting in line are actually here. Because would you live apart from your family? No. You come, and many of them are undocumented. So there is a deep impact when people are deported in this process. One of the leaders of the Bible's Badges and Business group is Richard Lang, who is the head of the, I think it's the Southern Baptist Convention of Evangelical Churches of America. Fantastic person and human being, a great pastor. And he has really moved the entire Christian movement. The Jewish movement's Jews have already been behind immigration reform for years, but really moved the Christian movement away from what was a knee-jerk reaction against immigrants into an understanding of the fact that we're all God's children and we all have a very, very important role to play in each other's lives. So the whole idea that churches and people of faith are becoming more involved in looking at immigration from an individual perspective as opposed from the boogeyman perspective has really changed a lot of the debate in Washington, D.C. One last thing, I was up in D.C. in December when BBB had a forum and a lobby day, and I sat down with one of my congressmen, brand new congressman from Georgia. He had just gotten elected. He was up there moving his stuff in, and on his desk was a brand new Testament. And I said, we were talking about immigration. He was like, oh, my constituents have spoken on this issue. I said, do you read that very often? Can I use that for a second? I pulled out a scripture from Romans on that, and I shared it with him, and I said, time to support immigration reform. I think people of faith need to speak out about, we ask a lot of times, what would Jesus do? Well, what would Jesus do? I think this is a really simple question, a really simple answer. And it's much more than just, we have to obey the law. You know, he said, render unto Caesar's, true. But also the most important thing about Jesus Christ was, and I hate this, I know this is not a church, but is about where you believe faith is. And what your faith actually means to you as a Christian or as a Jew or as a Muslim. And part of that is reaching out to your brothers and sisters. So, sorry, Pat, I didn't mean to steal the... I am just a lawyer.
When a lawyer gets to preaching, you better hold on, I'll tell you. Yes, I have a question back here. Get the microphone and ask the question.
It's not so much a question, but to comment on some of the commentary that you made. I think with regard to fear, one of the things that we should do is leave that fear. We talk about fear as if it were from somebody else. And nobody ever changed anything in the world from a closet. And we need to stand by our immigrant brothers and sisters in their fight. We cannot silence their voice in this fight. And nothing is going to change until we stand together, side by side with them, and not in front or behind them. So I encourage everyone here today to do something to show everybody that's on the fence, who might be afraid to be the only one coming out in support of immigration reform, but we all need to show that in numbers, in force, in commitment, and in compassion, we are much larger than the other side.
Thank you. Amen. We got time for one more question. I'll recognize the gentleman back here. We'll take one more. We're on a time schedule. And
I'm the director of the Elon University poll, and Chuck, you cited an interesting statistic that 70% support immigration reform. Our last April poll showed that almost 80% of North Carolinians support a pathway to citizenship. And so I was wondering, maybe the audience or the panel would think, is part of the problem is that members of Congress, although they see the support, are afraid that in a primary, a challenger could use voting for immigration reform against them, especially the Tea Party would say, you know what, let's put a target on this person's back. So are we ignoring this sort of large support for immigration reform because there's individuals in Congress that are sort of tying this up because of this could be used as ammunition against me in the next primary general election?
Bert, comment on that quickly, and I'll let
Yeah.
Charles comment on it. And we'll.
It's the same thing again. Yes, you're right. We need to be there next to our elected officials when they take the stand and say we need immigration reform. And we got to explain to them that amnesty is maybe the wrong word. We have to have a legalized process so those that are here undocumented get a legal status. But that means you got to stand up. And the fear that I described is not just the employees, it's also the employers.
Charles.
You know, interesting about on this issue of particularly Republicans being afraid of a primary challenge on this issue. If you go back to the last two elections, 2010 and 2012, and you look at those campaigns where immigration was an issue, the anti-immigration person of it was like 27 different campaigns. The anti-immigration person won one time, Lou Barletta in Philadelphia. Every single other time they lost because Americans do not support anti-immigrants. They just don't. So yeah, the fear is there, but there's no facts to support that. It's just the reality. They might get challenged on other issues, but they're not going to lose being pro-immigrant. They're just not going to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our panelists another hand. They've done a great job, and we could stay here all afternoon talking about this, and all of you certainly have stories. I thank all of you for being here this afternoon. You know, when this issue, from here at Farm Bureau as a farmer and looking at the issue dealing with our guest worker program and what we need for agriculture or what we need for border security, when this issue really became personal to me as an American, as an individual, was about 6 years ago now. I was in Poland. And the longest line I've ever seen anywhere was in Poland, waiting for people to try to get visas to come to America in the Polish at the American Embassy in Warsaw, Poland. And I had dinner one evening at the American ambassador's home in Warsaw, Poland. And the lady who was head of the domestics for in the American Embassy and American ambassador's home there obviously was a Polish national. And she told a story, and the American ambassador couldn't do a thing. Obviously, as has been said, most of the people that came here, they came here legally. She had a daughter that came to the United States on a student visa. She's in the Chicago area. And as happened, she overstayed her visa. She not only overstayed her visa, she got married here, she had a family, she started a business in the Chicago area. Everything is pretty good except her mother, who's working in the American came down with liver cancer. Now, you know what the prognosis is for liver cancer. It's more than just about agriculture or guest workers or board. It's about matters of life and death. And this woman had to make a choice. Does she go home back to Poland to see her dying mother? And what would be her chances? Even the American ambassador couldn't get her back here if she got back to Poland. Or does she stay here and never see her mother alive again? Ladies and gentlemen, it's more than just about jobs, it's about life and death in some cases. And I believe that as a state, I believe as a nation, we're better than that. I believe we're better than that. Thank all of you for being here. You've been a great audience. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.